Greetings, everybody! Welcome once more to Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into Golarion, the world setting of the Pathfinder role-playing game system? Because if you are today, I'm ready to lead you there. I'm your host here, Pathinder and Dracovin. I can guide you through a time-space universe portal that'll take us gateway right over to Golarion. We can check it out. We can learn about today's ancestry, Grindylow. You can play in 1st edition, but you can't in 2nd edition. We'll talk about it all. Please, though, before we leave, give me a little bit of tip. Subscribe over the YouTube side of things and let me know your experience with Grindylow in the comments below. I had players fight them in skulls and shackles. Anyway, are you ready to head through the portal? Grab my hand. Let's get going. Golarion awaits. We've arrived at Golarion! So, the problem with Grindylow, I'm going to say this now, is there are way too many sources that have a little bit of information and not a lot of information about them. Ba-boom! Blood of the Sea is where we can talk about from 1st edition, where it gives you stats for playing one. Unfortunately, they were a bit of expensive play. They had a racial traits that were 22 race points, if you want to look at the things that had race points and play them or not. That was expensive. But other places are, of course, Bestiary 2 and Bestiary 2. Yes. Bestiary 2 in 1st edition, Bestiary 2 in 2nd edition, both had Grindylow, and of course Monster Core for its greatest update. But between Bestiary 2 2nd edition and Monster Core, there wasn't a lot of updates other than stats. So who are the Grindylow? They're amphibious aberrations. They are small, they look like goblins from basically the waist up, kind of, except their teeth are a little bit more sharkish, and they kind of have like gills and stuff. Octopus waist down. They are not humanoids. That's an important part about them. They are not humanoids. They are aberrations. They're little creatures, but they also grow throughout their lives. We'll talk about this interesting aspect of it. So yeah, you kind of get a look at them. They do have a lot of teeth, 2 arms, fingers. They have the 6 octopus tentacles below them, the shark-like mouth, gills. They're about 4 feet tall. But yes, because one of their unique aspects is they grow throughout their lives. If you give a Grindylow a large amount of times, they can get massive. There are Grindylow that are large or larger sizes and will become champions of the schools they're part about. As rare as they are, they happen. They are dangerous. They exist. It's a fascinating aspect of the Grindylow nature, too. They can also eat everything. Eat anything that's almost living. They do like pain, chaos. They like a little bit of like pleasure from like things wriggling down while they're still alive in their gullet kind of thing. You know, they have weapons that they can use with their hands or their tentacles. The bigger they are, the better they are at using their tentacles, though, too. They move faster in water, but they can be on land. They are amphibious. And they do have a jet, like many basically cephalopods that they can use. And traditionally, the language they use is Thalassic, water-based language. These are all things to keep in mind when you're looking at how a Grindylow works, with its writhing tentacles that it might bother you with. Now, being aquatic, they do a lot of aquatic areas. You know, as amphibious as they are, water's big of them. Shallow water is very important for them, but it doesn't have to be fresh or brine water. It could be either. So, lakes, coastal regions, coral reefs are all big on them. They are pragmatic and a little bit of territorial, but not quite full territorial. Basically, they build places to live in that are a little bit more mobile, so if they need to move, they can. Like seaweed and Sargasso areas, hulls of abandoned ships. It's very rare that you'll find a Grindylow that will build permanent structures, and basically it depends on hunting grounds. If they find a hunting ground that's really great, that could last generations for them, they will do that until something bigger and meaner chases them out. And they are very experienced hunters. They also will scavenge anything, and basically, if they can take a bite out of it, they will eat it. Keep that in mind. I talked about that already, but mentioning it again. If they can take a bite out of it, they will eat it. So they organize themselves in groups called schools. These can be from a few to hundreds of them. Smaller ones could be taken over by more powerful aquatic creatures, but the fact is that most alliances that last between Grindylow and other creatures only last until there's a big setback, which basically the Grindylow will then scatter, break themselves into smaller schools or something like that. And that can be for bigger schools too. powerful Grindylow, maybe a large giant one, could rule over it. But as soon as that one's gone, it might break apart into smaller groups. They are violent, rapacious, they will attack other settlements, they attack ships, basically anything that passes through their territory. They are pragmatic a lot about these things. They do travel in these groups, and basically powerful warriors will be leading some of the groups. They like special skeletal trophies of their prey as shepherds for their territory. Similar to how goblins actually hate things like horses and dogs, and domesticate goblin dogs, Grindylow actually hate squids of all shapes and sizes, and consider them to be freaks of nature, unusual, horrible things. So if you ever want to really insult a Grindylow, call one a squid. Yeah. The fact of that they hate images of squids that much. Some ships will actually, like, put images of squids on the bottom of their ships to keep Grindylow away, which works when it's smaller schools, but larger ones might attack them if they do that. So, you know, it's sort of like, oh, this squid, keep it away. But this hatred of squid doesn't apply to tentacle creatures in general, because octopuses are the epitome in grace and power, and they will oftentimes befriend them and keep them as companions. Yeah, same can be said for devilfish too. So, other cephalopod-type creatures are big in their things. Yep. A fascinating aspect of them, that kind of hatred there. Now, if you look on Golarion, you can find them in a lot of different regions. In places like the Shackles, they do infest a lot of the islands in that area, and they actually will find themselves in that entire area, all the way north up in the coastline from northern Grund all the way up to Aveston in the north, in the ice-rimmed areas of the Ivory Sea, fringing the crown of the world. Find them all up and down that coastline. Of course, some place like the Shackles is much easier to infest in. In TNZ, there's a sea drake named Iliosis that has a tribe of Grindylows that basically have been in the southern dock warehouse district of Penjima, Bachuan, where they purchased legally. And basically, as of 4724 last year, the city hall tried to remove them, and it's ended up in court, which does tend to head towards the sea drake's favor. But they've had some trouble with getting some good lawyers, so as much as it's like in their favor, it's kind of an interesting thing that a sea drake and a bunch of Grindylows moved into a town. Places like Sadao, which are waterlogged country that's all under the water, there are Grindylows that are actually found commonly in settlements. They found more ways to work together with Sadao, basically being an aquatic nation and finding ways to have a bunch of these aquatic species that, you know, may or may not necessarily get along normally to get along because of common threats. Hey, go see my videos on Sadao. The Songal Sea, well, that one's got an interesting thing because Grindylow there have a really bad reputation for being basically extra ferocious and sadistic, gorging themselves when, you know, that they always seem to be hungry no matter what. And the fact is, storms and inclement weather is when they attack, basically. It's an opportunity. It's Grindylow weather. And though in Songal Sea we can see that as a good example of it, basically Grindylows know how to take advantage of any kind of weather or advantage for when they do attack things. If it's an advantage, they will take it, they will use it, they will try to, you know, hunt, kill, take, feed. Again, nom nom nom, anything in the mouth goes. It's the Grindylow way. But there you go. There's Grindylow. These creatures do have some similarities to goblins in certain ways. There are some very things like goblins can be very ravenous and stuff though too. But I feel like because Grindylows are a creature that feels more akin to a little bit of goblin slash shark slash octopus, the natural parts of it, the animalistic parts of it almost take over more, making them even more voracious and ravenous than even what goblins on the surface would be. So they certainly have some appearance similar to them, but they are very much so interesting and different creatures. We don't know where they exactly came from either. They have some interesting similarities about that connections with, like, you know, oh, they hate squids, kind of like how goblins have dislike of dogs and horses, you know, or, you know, they can be very tribal and hunting. But very much so. You can also see there is a little bit of that. You can also civilize them. Look at Sadao, where they can find a way to live in amongst other people. It's just a nature of where they are. Again, it's like probably more nature versus, or maybe it's probably a lot more nurture versus nature but they have a little bit of that nature in them that, you know, unless they're under the right circumstances, they're vicious, ravenous, and probably really dangerous. That's a Grindylow in a nutshell. And of course, you know, you giant ones, don't want to mess with them. Don't want to mess with them. Big, mean, hit you. I hope you enjoyed joining me today, learning about Grindylow. If you want to see more of my stuff, you can always check me out over live on Twitch or over on YouTube. Twitch is where I record all my tabletop stuff that ends up on the YouTube side of thing. I also have some gaming play, variety gaming, hanging out with friends, all various different things there. My current live plays, what I do put up on the YouTube side of thing, is Fall of Avonswell, Wednesdays at 8. I do recommend seeing any of my live plays. That's Pathfinder 2nd Edition 1, but any of the ones are really fun. I've had a bunch over the years. You can also check out Discussing Tabletop, Saturdays at 6. It's my kind of talk show kind of thing where I dive into some interesting topics in the tabletop world. Make sure to check out my social media. And until the next time, we chat about anything in the Golarion world or elsewhere. I bid you all out there adieu and wonderful. Farewell.